Everybody see Marlene? Yo! Okay. The 24th of March, Bonnie is telling us that she's making her more pussy hats. If you haven't gotten your pussy hat yet, by all means, see Bonnie. We have all kinds of announcements going on today. Let's see, where shall we begin? Bob Sturdivant, tell us about that program that's
testimony in behalf of House Bill 74, which was essentially being sponsored by some, I think it's 8 or 9 of the legislators in the State House to adopt the Move to Amend platform.
Yes, please, take money out of politics, please.
Which is essentially corporations are not people and money is not free speech. We also we testified in our. It was really kind of fun because we saw our testimony online afterwards. But I have to say, Deborah was the big star, and she may want to give her.
She promised me that she would talk today.
So, anyway, so I'm gonna. We also met with our legislator, which is Jonathan Deaver, State House 28th District. We met with him privately, and I thought that went pretty well. He happens to be a Republican, and so, but he seemed to be receptive.
It's okay to talk to those folks.
Well, I will also say this: we had a Move to Amend meeting. We had a Move to Amend meeting this Sunday, and for the very first time, we had a Tea Party Republican there who supports our efforts. Was giving us some really good insights on how to make our presentation more presentable to other Tea Party and certainly Republicans. But I think I'm going to give this to Deborah.
Hi, everybody.
Go, Deb.
So I had an interesting day at the State House because I'd never been to the State House before. And I took Sid, you know, he's my little 1-year-old over here. So it was neat. We had a 2 o'clock appointment with the representative, thanks to Rob. He set that all up. And we actually threw this together in about the period of 24 hours. We got a text Monday morning from Karen Galloway, and I called Rob. I said, Rob, you want to go with me? So off we went. We had to submit testimony, and this was written testimony beforehand, and I didn't know the procedure, but I learned it. So if you ever want to give a presentation at a committee up there, they have a form online. Call the main sponsor of whatever bill, whatever House resolution you're in favor of or in opposition of. You can do either one. And you fill out the witness statement, and then you email that in and call them and check and make sure they actually got your testimony that's in there, because it gives a little space. But if they don't actually get all the testimony, then you probably can't testify. I actually had to send mine separately as a Word document. So we did all that, and we met with Jonathan Deaver, and that went really well. And one of his main concerns was he didn't say no. He didn't say yes. He said, my campaign costs $1 million. Whew. We met with the committee. They didn't say no. They didn't say yes. They said, and I'm paraphrasing, if this happened and television commercials are really expensive, how would we campaign?
Talk to the people.
Right. They didn't say no, they didn't say yes. I had lived in Germany for a little while, so I just, off the top of my head, said, well, over in Germany, they put a lot of advertising in publicly, in public spaces. They have columns, they put posters up, they put them at the bus stations, they put them on the trains, on the trams, on the trolleys, on the ferries, but of course we have a lot more people driving over here. So, they didn't say no. And Rob did a great job of inviting his friend Bill. I believe they are friends. That's wonderful. Because what my testimony was about was when Trump was visiting the Schaeffer Corporation, I talked about how our group went out, and I asked Rob to escort me across the street and to talk to the other side, because it is so important to talk to the other side. So we've got about 80% across the political spectrum that says get big money out of politics. Okay, so this is Republicans, Independents, Democrats, and we can't just talk our lingo. We can't just talk our vocabulary. We need to incorporate everyone's voice Otherwise, it's just going to be one side against the other. They're going to see you on the other side. They're going to say no just because they think you're the other side, even though 80% of Americans agree. Okay? So I think what we learned as a takeaway from Rob's friend Bill is not just to say stop corporate elitism or corporations running and that, but maybe call it big money instead, or talk about entities, because it's not just corporations who are doing this. It's anyone who has a really, really big influence. So part of my testimony was that in a book I read, and this book was from 2015, 158 families contributed over 50% of the money to the presidential campaign, the primary campaign for president of the U.S. That is a staggering amount of money to come from 158 families. And I said, do you really think you get one person, one vote when that is happening? So they didn't say no, they didn't say yes. I would encourage anyone who wants to go to the State House to do it. It was a really good experience.
Thank you. From Sid's home to God's ears. Thank you very much.
May I?
Mark, go, Mark.
People said, what happened to you? I thought I told people I'd be away for a month. I was gone for a month to Las Cruces, New Mexico, where I've been visiting for some years. I won't go into any detail now, I'm sure you...
Glad you're back.
But I just say there's a class struggle going on there exactly like ours. We're near the border, so I could talk, in some venues, I'll talk a lot about the work that goes on around immigrants.
Thank you. I'm glad to have you back, Mark. Thank you.
Just really quickly, I know there are a lot of friends of public education here. There is legislation that I don't think it's in either House or Senate committee, but it's being considered right now at the state level by the great friend of public education, John Kasich. What he wants to do is not dismantle, but significantly weaken the power of the Ohio State Board of Education and instead make a cabinet position where it'd be one person instead of a committee of people. And we can all see that basically what this would be doing is telling him what he wants to hear about public education. So please, I encourage you, get on the horn, call his office and tell him no, absolutely not.
My understanding is that they're trying to take away local boards of education so that communities would no longer have a say over, they want it administered from the top rather than... It's scary to me. It's really scary to me. David Hughes, Moms on Action and Other Things.
Thank you, Alberta, so much. Keep order wild. We're getting there. So much going on, you can't keep track of it. Mothers to Man Action, their next meeting is this Saturday, 10:30 at St. Bernard Library. They always meet at libraries or City Hall where guns are not permitted. That's St. Bernard Library, that's at 10 McClellan Avenue, 10:30. Please see me afterwards if you want any more information. They're a fantastic group, and unfortunately they're needed more than how they
And
have.
what are they about? They're about...
Responsible gun legislation.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Now more than ever.
And just as important, I think, when you talk about District 2 Congress in Ohio, we all know Dr. Janet. She comes here quite often, is not here today. She is, Springfield Township used to be District 1, gerrymandered into District 2. So a lot of people in Springfield Township aren't aware that they're now in District 2. They won't know until they get to the polls. Anyway, she's, my wife and I, Jenny Hughes and I, are sponsoring just a get-together, greet and meet at our home. There's a flyer on everybody's table. Please take one. She's a dynamite candidate. She's going to be running the primary and then for the election, hopefully. So that's this Sunday, 3 o'clock. We're having hors d'oeuvres and beverages and stuff. It'll be a lot of fun. So please join us. It's behind St. Vivian's on Denier, off Quentin Road. I see a hand up. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paul from the Labor Council, and the Labor Council invites you to join us on Working People's Day of Action. This Saturday, we have two buses going up from Springdale.
To the State
at 7
House?
in the morning.
To the State House?
I'm sorry,
To the State House?
to the State House, correct.
I want to be on that bus.
Great, great. Well, there's plenty of room. There's one bus full, the other bus filling up.
Don't
So I've
leave without
left-
seeing me.
Okay, there are several copies of this flyer over there by the name tags, by the buttons. And it returns, it leaves at 7 in the morning, returns at around 4 o'clock. And it's basically about all the assaults on unions and the right to work machinations that are happening. So please join us.
I have a question. Are we going to have the gerrymandering completed by the next election, or is this going to take years? Who knows?
But my understanding is that gerrymandering will be, that if HR 74 has passed, and then the next day or so it passed the Senate. It's not, whatever the number is, but it will be on the ballot on May 8th. So we need to be voting on this on May 8th.
But will we have new districts by the time half FAB is running?
No. And you know that they've just gerrymandered his district so that it's more difficult for him to win. So we really need to pay attention to that race. That is in the first district, that's my district. Against Shabbat. And there's a whole bunch of money supporting Shabbat. Well, it really depends on how they do it, because in Pennsylvania, they had to do it now, depending on the courts.
That's in the Ohio Constitution, how it's going to be. And I don't think this legislation is going to undo the Ohio Constitution.
Rob says it's not going to undo the Ohio Constitution, so the gerrymandering stays until 2021, the elections then. The change has to happen, folks. We've got to be patient and keep ourselves willing to make the changes that need to happen. Other announcements? There we go, Bennett.
Testing. Actually, follow up to the gun control. I've read that the kids down in Florida at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School are organizing a couple of things. One is a student walkout on the 14th of March, and the other one is national demonstrations all over the country on March 24th. So keep an eye out for that. We have some time to do it, but I just read about that. I thought, you know, things may be changing with this one. The feel is a little different. Even our governor came out.
I agree with you.
Right.
I mean, they're saying that if you take money from the NRA, you shouldn't get elected. Those
Right.
kids are powerful.
And if you see the
And they speak well. I was so
really
impressed.
articulate kids, right? Have you seen the differences in the NRA's contributions to Republicans versus Democrats? Oh, yeah. It's outrageous, it's crazy, and it's obvious.
Okay, other announcements. Thank you, Bennett. Other announcements. Okay, here we go.
Just noticed that on some of our tables, there's this thing about this afternoon's screening at the Marison Academy of a backpack full of cash. The film narrated by Matt Damon.
Right. Sturman talked to us about it. Thank you. I have an announcement. The announcement is about naturalization. You know, I knew this naturalization thing. And there will be a naturalization ceremony at St. James Elementary School on Hubble Road. And that is going to be at 10 a.m. And anybody who would like to go and work with me on registering new citizens to vote, I usually get between 60 and 70 people registered to vote at the one time. Yes. This Friday. This Friday. So if you, and I provide all the materials, I give you a League of Women Voters button. We go, I feel like a wolf in sheep's clothing when I put on my league button, you know. But I personally was able to register 252 people just in January at these ceremonies. So it's really worthwhile going. And they're very enthusiastic about participating in our elections. St. James Elementary School. And when they have them in these elementary schools, it's really cute, folks. They have the kids choir sing, they have the Boy Scouts bring out the flag. They introduce all the local officials. It's really sweet. It's really a nice thing. And it's not at the court this week. It's at the local school, and it's always fun. So it's at 11 o'clock. And if you see me, if you're interested in going, and I'll give you the information. I'm happy to do that. Usually when I go to the courthouse, I'd like them to come down with me a first time, but I can give you the address, which is 3565 Hubble Street at 11 o'clock. But you have to be there. For me, you have to be there at by 10:30 at least. So if you haven't done it yet, you really need to try this. It is such a positive thing to help people, new people in our country, help to vote. It's really fun. And without further ado, I would like to introduce a member of our own team here, Alison Gorski. Alison has a degree from Xavier, and she wants to talk from the perspective of a person with mental illness. She's going to talk about homelessness, insurance, and issues about the shooting from this week. Without further ado, Alison, we love you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, fellow Democrats. My name is Alison Gorski, and I am a person with mental illness. As a person with mental illness, I've experienced a lot of things, and I've met a lot of people throughout my journey. And what I want to address today is 3 issues. The issue of school shootings and gun violence, and how our system of gun control, our background checks,
Closer.
our gun policy that makes it easy for anybody, unless they're convicted of a felony, to or have been adjudicated mentally ill, to buy a gun at a gun store, or the gun shows is like there's exceptions, they don't do background checks. But I, as a person with mental illness, because I've not been adjudicated by a judge as a mentally ill person, is a dangerous person, I could go in and buy a gun, but of course I wouldn't. But there was no way. The gun laws are so lax in this country, especially in states like Florida, that Nicholas Cruz was able to buy these guns. You know, he was all they cared about was, well, he's over 18. And they figured, well, he can vote. But voting is a right. Owning a gun is not a right; it's a privilege. And it was clear that Nicholas Cruz was mentally disturbed. He posted stuff in his social media accounts about wanting to kill people or being a professional shooter. And that's another issue, the gun violence, but also the lack of treatment for mentally ill people that touches upon like the homeless issue and also the gun violence issue. Most mentally ill people are not violent people. They're usually more likely to be a victim of violent crimes such as assault, sexual assault, or even murder. And what happens is because nobody really now there were people who warned the FBI that Nicholas Cruz was could be a dangerous person and should be watched, but a lot of people ignore that. And he also wasn't treated. He didn't have any real mental health treatment. And a lot of these people who shoot and commit these violent crimes and they're mentally ill, usually they don't get any treatment. There's a lot of problem with getting treatment for mental illness because, well, budgets are being cut by politicians and senator, presidents, like Trump just cut like billions of dollars from mental health care. And that's why people like end up in jail, or they end up shooting, mass shootings, not just in schools but other places, because they're not treated, you know, for their mental health issues. And when we're treated, when we're able to get treatment, I was lucky because I was in the middle class, and I was able to get mental health treatment, but a lot of poor people can't, people who grow up poor cannot access treatment. And then there's also like a lot of stigma around it, because people think, oh, you're mentally ill, you must be crazy, you're going to kill yourself or kill somebody else. But that's not true. As I was telling you, we are not violent people. We're mostly afraid of violence more than others, and part of it's because that's part of nature. A lot of mental illness is, you know, fear and paranoia. But what really I wanted to talk to you is about stigma. A lot of people say, well, mentally ill people are lazy, and all they want to do is get their checks and sit around and smoke and do drink and do drugs and just laze around. But that's not true. Most mentally ill people are able and do want to be employed and work and contribute to the community. But because of stigma and a lack of treatment and vocational programs that actually work, many are unemployed. Even though they want to work, it is very hard to get work because of stigma. A lot of people think, oh, this person's not going to be able to do the job, or they're going to like go off someday. But as a person who's been stable on their medication for years, I know that is not true. There are some people who don't like to take medication, and there's some people that can't, the medication doesn't really help them, or it works, or it makes them worse. And you can be stabilized without medication. I've known people have. But because employers and the outside community still has this stigma, even though we're having a lot of people, a lot of celebrities coming out with their struggle with mental health issues. You know, there's a lot of people like Carrie Fisher and Patty Duke and well, different people, entertainers and movie stars, and even a few politicians, though it's not really that acceptable to be running for office and having a mental illness. Because I remember, like this is a long time ago, when George McGovern was running for president, I was, Thomas Eagleton was going to be his vice president running mate, and he had to resign for that, and somebody else was picked because someone found out that he had sought mental health treatment a long time ago. But we're getting better, you know, there's less of this crazy psycho stuff in the media. People are getting more respectful and a hopeful view of mental illness. Just, you know, it's not a life sentence, it's a chronic disease, just like high blood pressure, diabetes, or heart problems. It's not a fatal diagnosis, well, it's not a fatal diagnosis, but it's treatable from about 95% of the people can get some kind of treatment. It doesn't necessarily mean medicine. It could mean therapy or their own spiritual way of being treated. And mental illness, it's just like anything else. It's not the whole person. We always want to see the person first and not the mental illness. I mean, I have other identities besides being a mentally ill person. A person with mental illness, I have I play bridge, I travel, I read, I go on the computer, I have Facebook friends, I do anything that, we're just people, we do everything that anybody else does. We raise families, we work, we volunteer, we get involved in politics. And that's like one thing I've always was interested in doing way before I was supposedly diagnosed. I was going to a Democratic club that is in a different part of the city. And I was always participating in meetings there. So what we are is just people. We should see the person first and not the illness. And not all of us are going to be, if we're on treatment, if we're stabilized, we'll have a bad day. We'll have days when we're really feeling lousy and low and depressed. But then we'll also have good days. And right now, for me, the good days far outnumber the bad days. And I'd like to thank you for your attention and your kindness. I've not experienced as much stigma as other people. There was more stigma like in our earlier generations, but now it's getting it's easing off. I faced stigma as a child a little bit. I was bullied as a child, but that I've overcome all this stuff, and I'd like to thank you for listening to my speech, and I'd like to say have a nice day.
Okay.
Bye.
I have a comment on,
Oh,
Just a minute.
yes.
so, turning it on.
Hold it up,
turning
hold it up.
Okay, hello. All right, I'm Ellen Beerhorst. I happen to be a psychologist. And about a year ago, I attended a very interesting presentation and learned some curious and little-known facts about mental illness. It was said and alleged that 10% of the population are people who hear voices. These include people who are heavily medicated and are hospitalized, and also people who lead ordinary lives. 10% hear voices. And so, long story short, I went out of town, I took a training, and now we have a support group for people who hear voices. These can be people who are high functioning or low functioning or any kind of functioning. But I'm telling you that because most of us don't know how many of folks all around are having auditory hallucinations on a daily or weekly basis. And so these people deserve to have dignity and support, and there is now a Hearing Voices Network meeting every week. And you can find out more about it on Facebook if you search Hearing Voices Cincinnati. That's it.
Thank you for your comments, Ellen. And actually, I sometimes would have auditory hallucinations, but they weren't scary or anything, and I never followed their commands. And mostly people calling my name, and then I kind of figured out I also have auditory, it's like, I have auditory, they're not hallucinations, like I hear things or I misunderstand things, and it's not to do with my hearing, it's to do with my brain, and it's part of one of my illnesses. Any more questions?
Thanks for telling your story, Ian. I'm a mental health professional for 50 years. I have mental illness myself. And I want to see your opinion. I think we should be able to probate people who have severe addiction and mental illness to save their lives. it really annoys me that family members know it, like the kid in Florida, but we can't get people into treatment, even though our treatment programs have a long way to go. They're not so great because they're overworked, etc. So I wonder what you thought about probate.
I've known people who were probated, and it wasn't always because of, now this is back in about 30 or 40 years ago. Now I've not really known anybody who was probated recently, but I think it's a good idea to probate people who are like a danger to themselves. There's something called agnosia. I think it's called agnosia, and the person denies that they're mentally ill. And since they're adults, it's like you really can't do anything about it. But I'd like them to change the law a little bit. But I don't want people like back in the old days where people were probated because their family didn't want to deal with them. But really, they're not. If they're harm to themselves or they're an addiction, and it's gonna, that's also a harm to themselves because they could overdose, and there's not. I mean, for some things there's stuff like naloxone, but some of our overdoses they can't reverse them and the person dies, such as alcohol.
Testing. Yeah, I've worked in behavioral health since 1971, actually. I appreciate your sharing your story with us. It takes courage to do that. Thank you. President Kennedy signed the Community Mental Health Act in 1963, and that act was designed to stop locking people up in psychiatric asylums. I won't even call them hospitals, but folks used to be locked up for their entire lives. Kennedy's had a relative that was, I don't know exactly what the diagnosis was, but in fact was institutionalized. And basically the Community Mental Health Act, a major piece of it was if a person is not imminently dangerous to themselves or others, or so disoriented that they can't take care of themselves, then you can't keep them locked up in a hospital. So there were folks who were in hospitals for 30, 40 years. The institutionalization started to let them out. And they've been in the community ever since, actually in and out of hospitals sometimes. One of the things that I believe the Kennedys envisioned that did not occur was a community that was supportive of people, and our communities since the 60s, they were improving in the 60s, then it turned to shit, I think, excuse me.
Thank you, you're right.
But in fact, with Nixon and Strom Thurmond starting their Southern strategy, and by 68 or so, things have gone downhill. And a lot of young kids these days are culturally deprived. They've never seen good government because there hasn't been any in this country since Johnson. The string of folks since then has been pitiful, and the other issue you mentioned was poverty. Well, you didn't mention poverty. You said you were middle class, so you were lucky, and that's really a good point. Because what happens with the mentally ill is a lot of people are experiencing poverty because they're mentally ill. And I've heard folks that I know who are mentally ill say, I would much rather be crazy than poor. Now, I'm quoting somebody with that.
Yeah.
And I say, yeah, right. And they would say stuff like, well, in that case, you ought to just close down the mental health system and give us the money. I didn't agree with that. That piece of it. The other thing is the mental health system does have some good work, but it is underfunded. And in fact, the communities are not as accepting of the presence of the mentally ill as they should be. And I'll stop with that. Thank you.
Yeah, I understand, Ben. It's a very big issue because, actually you can blame Reagan for some of this because he did a lot. He had a lot more hospitals closed down because he reduced their budget. And he said, well, let's take the people in the community because it's actually more cost efficient than to keep them hospitalized. But he didn't bother, and nobody in the government bothered to build all these community centers and then educate people about, well, these people are not violent, and they're not gonna just loaf around and smoke. They wanna work, when they get stabilized and get into the community, they're gonna wanna do things like volunteer, or take care of family members, or whatever they wanna do. But they need help from community centers, they need psychiatrists, and a lot of them will need medical services, because when you're in a hospital setting, you often develop chronic illnesses, and of course the smoking issue is a big thing. And these people wind up, a lot of them, if they can't get service, they'll wind up either living with a family member or being incarcerated in jail, because they'll get arrested for something, like drug offenses, or just like minor robbery and stuff. They'll be going in and out of jail, trespassing, or they'll be on the street or in shelters and homeless shelters, which is not a good environment for anybody, because you're outside all the time. You can be a victim of crime, assault, and the shelters are not very good. You know what I mean? They're just like a roof over your head and maybe 1 or 2 meals a day, but they usually make you leave after a certain time in the morning, and then you go home. You go out in the community. You're stuck with being homeless, and it's very sad situation. I've known people who are homeless. I knew somebody who slept under a guy who slept under a bridge for a long time because he couldn't get there's a lack of affordable housing. There's also the stigma of a lot of landlords not wanting to rent to these people, and a lot of people are low income and they need affordable housing. They need vouchers, and if you try to get on Section 8, you're going to be on a long waiting list.
As a teacher who taught in the public school system for over 30 years, I've had many experiences with kids. We saw reports about Nicholas Cruz, and teachers from kindergarten on up were talking about the concerns that they had for this child. I can remember a kindergarten child, the very first day of school. We've never seen, he came out with an explicative deleted at his teacher that day, and when we called the parent in, somebody else must have taught him that. And so this was always the excuse. So mother finally threw up her hands and gave him to the grandmother. And we kept saying, there's going to be problems with this kid, there's going to be problems with this kid, he needs help. The grandmother says, oh, no, I'll take care of him. She told him he couldn't do something, so he shot her dead. So he's in prison. I had another one that would sit there at his desk, and he would think about, how can I hurt this child over on that side of the room? I'm going to get up and I'm going to go hurt them. But his parents had set up this guideline that he only got a 15-minute timeout. And guess what? Now he's in prison because he tried to kill his parents. And then the only student that we reported that had constant problems was a kid that wound up assaulting me in the classroom. And only because I filed charges against him did we find out he was supposed to be getting mental health services, and it wasn't happening. He was supposed to be in a very small class size environment. Nothing was happening. But because I filed a charge against him, he finally got the services that he was supposed to have. But you hate to have to get to that point. These are children. You don't want to file charges against a 10-year-old child. But the realization was, if I didn't do that, he wouldn't get the help that he needed. And so it's a very frustrating situation being a teacher. I'm sure the other teachers can tell you about some of the kids they have had that you say, oh wow, if somebody doesn't help this child, there's going to be problems. But then there's always this thing of denial. My kid's fine. My kid's fine. And many of the times when we brought the parents in for those conferences, we understood why the child had problems.
Thank you for your service as a public school teacher.
You had raised the issue of media and the stigma. I don't know whether anyone else here is a fan of Homeland, but I was really struck when you were talking about that the main character in Homeland has a history of mental illness, but precisely because she's more aware of how really rotten and crazy the political situation is. Yeah. Her own sister says, "Oh, you're taking your meds, or you need some therapy," and so she says, "No, the government is totally crazy and horrible things are happening." So we're all in danger of being diagnosed with some kind of mental illness.
That's true.
Let's diagnoses.
Hi, I'm Kay, and I've had a lifetime of mental and emotional sickness, but I did manage to get through college, and I've had jobs on and off. And what I found and where I specialized was a chemical dependency, and that very often a child, a young teenager, will use chemicals, drugs, to self-medicate. And we need to be able to identify those young people early and help them with other types of therapy, whether it be medicine or ongoing therapy. So when you hear about chemical dependency, think of all of us, that we all need some help with it, and our children especially need to be identified as helped.
Thank you so much for being brave and coming here and speaking, Allison. That was so good of you. I know there's so much mental health stigma out there, and so thank you. You're very brave to come out today. I just want to mention, I know Sid might try and take over the microphone here, but
Train him young.
that's right, train him young. He's going to learn. So I'm a physician assistant, and I worked psychiatry for 5 years at University of Cincinnati. And just so you know, there are phone numbers you can put in your phone that might make a difference someday. This morning, someone I know called me. He said one of his coworkers was having a mental breakdown. I said, okay, that person needs to go to PES. That stands for Psychiatric Emergency Services. It's part of University Hospital, so UC Health. It used to be on the 8th floor of the adult hospital. Then it was over at Deaconess. Now I think they're calling it Bridgeway Hospital. It's basically near where the old Jewish hospital was. But if you look up Psychiatric Emergency Services, University of Cincinnati, you can program that into your phone. And then whether someone asks you or whether you think, hey, it might be a good idea, you can call that number. They actually have a mobile transport team just in case it gets to the point where you're scared that someone might be locked in, maybe considering suicide or might have a gun. Okay? For children, Cincinnati Children's also has an intake line that you can call, and you can call just to get advice or because you think you're heading over there with someone and you need to know what's the heads up, what's going to happen there. It's called PIRC, P-I-R-C, stands for Psychiatric Intake Response Services, I believe. And so you can Google that and find that number. It's been a tough couple of weeks, I think, for everyone, for anyone who reads the news and all these things happening with gun violence. And maybe someone can hold Sid here, we'll find out. But 2 weeks ago, I was reading my news feed, and it said about a Black Lives Matter guy who was shot. So he was biking about 1:30 in the morning, and he was killed. He didn't quite make it to the hospital. Well, he made it there, but then he died. And then, of course, last weekend, they were just 1 week apart, right? So sometimes people, they learn compensation behaviors. And if it gets too far, it becomes a compulsion. But if it's just a little ritual that you do that can be helpful, that might be good for you to help calm you down when you're anxious. So it's okay. For some people, this is a prayer. For some people, this is a moment of silence. For a group that I used to be in, there was a chant that we did. And we would do this maybe after some great event in the world. So we did this after the tsunamis that hit. We did this when one of our members who was in her 80s passed away. I did this personally when one of my friend's dads died of a heart attack. And so I just wanted to do this chant today. And if you hear it, and if you get the lingo, it's in Korean. But feel free to join in. It just repeats a few times. And then I'll pass the microphone, I think, to Michael here, because he was waiting.
Jijumbo sa, 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 jijumbo sa.
Thank you.
Peter,
Thank you very much.
Peter, how do you spell that? Peter, how do you spell that?
That's right here.
write it down for you later.
JUNGGOSA.
Good.
Thank you, Deborah. I hate to follow that. It seems like the sheriff and some of our judges are beginning to campaign for more jail space, which I oppose. I hope you'll help resist. We need more treatment beds. Most of the jail space is taken up by non-violent misdemeanor offenders like trespassing and whatever. We don't need all this jail space. We need more treatment programs. And the prisons are full of the mentally ill already.
Son published this book, The Selling of America.
When I was much younger, I lived overseas, and I had a girlfriend who worked with autistic and mongoloid kids. So I started doing that too, and I spent a lot of time doing that, and I learned a lot from it, and it scared me at first. I didn't really know how to deal with these kids, and I didn't understand what they were going through, and I can't say that I do now understand, but over the years, as I've moved further and further away from those years, I've become much more inured to issues of mental health. And I find that, I'm not sure stigma is the right word. I think maybe fear
Yes, it's
is
fear.
the right word. And you know, it's kind of like, oh, you want to cross the street before you actually encounter somebody who's clearly disturbed or hearing voices or talking to themselves a lot, and you don't actually see an earbud in their ear or a visible cell phone, you know. And I just want to know if people have ideas in how we can mitigate the fear.
It's kind of hard to do because sometimes I get a little nervous. I know a person she is manic, and you would think like maybe she was. I actually thought for a while that she was on like methamphetamines or something like that, some kind of drug stimulant. I thought she was like a meth head or something like that, but really she had bipolar. And she was always talking on her cell phone, and she was always like, she had this little notebook out, and she was like writing, but it seemed more like she was scribbling. She was writing so fast. It was like even faster than I wrote when I was in college taking notes in the class. And also, yeah, you could be mistaken for a drug, because a lot of the medications can make you look like you are doped up. And, but that's the problem with it. Some people are over-medicated, some people are under-medicated, and some people are on the wrong meds. But that's really because a lot of us don't have the nerve to speak up for ourselves. I had to learn that a bit a long time ago. If you don't want to be over-medicated or treated in a more restrictive way because people think you're dangerous or something, you got to speak up and tell your doctor, well, I don't want to take this med, or could you lower the dose? But there is a lot of fear because people are afraid of the average. Like, you know, Donald Trump, he plays on people's fear. Like, they're afraid of Muslims, they're afraid of immigrants, they're afraid of people of color. They think some people, they see a black person, a black male of a certain age walking down the street, they'll cross the street too. It's the same as, it's like racism or xenophobia. It's a fear. It's based upon our own human nature to be afraid of stuff, something we don't know about. But see, me, I don't have too many fears. Like, I don't have the fear of public speaking. That's the number one fear of most people. I don't have that fear. I have other fears, but they're mostly based on logic. Like, okay, in general, I'm not afraid of like spiders or insects, but there's certain ones that I know that are dangerous. That if they bite me, I could be in a lot of pain or I could be dead. And same with snakes. I don't generalize with snakes. I see that garter snake, slithering by. I don't freak out. It's just a snake. But if I was like to see a rattlesnake, I would be really cautious. I'd get out of there fast because I know they're deadly, they're poisonous, they're venomous. Most of my fears are now I have some that are based on my perceptual problems, like going down the steps and walking on uneven ground is not fun for me because I have vision and perceptual problems. But I don't really fear people unless they are actually dangerous. But no, most people do. Well, I mean, like, yeah, in general. Well, Donald Trump, I wouldn't want to be near him because he exudes evil. Yeah,
that's a red line. Yeah, I was just going to say, I think a lot of people who are having problems, it's precisely a sense of isolation. I'm just trying to speak for Williams. Sometimes I feel when I go in the parking lot in Kroger's, I have sulker written all over my forehead. People need gasoline lights. But I've had some great conversations. I mean, and again, I think engaging with people who really are isolated and sort of show some signs that might make you scared is also one way of sort of not only helping people but enriching your perspective of the range of human beings. Exercising your own.
I'd just like to say something. I think the more people who come out and say, yes, I have a mental health issue, the more we're going to see them as normal people who are just like other people. They just want to have a chance. They want to be able to work, have families. They want to be a part of the whole. So the more people who are coming out, the better.
Thank you. I want to put in a couple of personal notes here. Some of you know that I've recently been diagnosed with Parkinson's. And one of the symptoms of Parkinson's is hallucinations. They keep on telling me that you haven't had any, and I said, no. Why haven't you had any? It's kind of like, shame on me for not having hallucinations. You understand, but it may be coming, and I don't know. You understand, I'm new to this. But that's an expected part of just the disease. I want you to know that it's not just mental illness, it may be actually a physical illness. Some of you who know Stanley and me as a family know that we have another brother. And they do this comedy routine. I'm the other brother. No, I'm the other brother. No, I'm the other brother. No, my other brother came to live with us in 1999, and the VA said he was a lost cause. That he was so mentally ill that I shouldn't bring him home. And I said, no, he's my brother, and he's coming home, and I will make this right. And they said, we have another guy who has no place to sleep tonight. Will you take him too? I said, no. My brother is a Juilliard-trained percussionist. He is a fine, fine musician, and he works all over town on a volunteer basis. He doesn't get enough. He's on a full mental disability from the VA. And God bless him, they have been taking very good care of him. He has weekly appointments at the VA, he has all kinds of medications from the VA, and I tell you, it really, it saves my heart that I know that he's being supervised in a way that I can't. And besides, he cuts the grass, and he shovels the walks, and he pays for the cleaning lady. Now, Stanley does the cooking, so I have two men in my life, one to cook and one to clean. It doesn't get any better than this. So much. But my brother could never, ever make it on the money that the VA gives to him on a monthly basis, and he's not allowed to earn any outside money. So it's a good thing he's with me, and there's, you know, he gets a free bed and Stanley free food. I mean, we got a good system going here. I would like to mention a couple of things coming up. Let's see. Will you stand up, please, and go in the back? We have a new person we need to introduce. Can we get a microphone to her? Where's the microphone? Right there. Right there. Alicia Reese is term limited.
Yes.
And so Kathy is running for Alicia's seat for the the Ohio House District 33, which is my district. And I met her at the League of Women, but she's got to be a good person if she goes to the League of Women Voters.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, good afternoon. Can you hear me now? Okay. Thank you so much for inviting me here this afternoon. I tried to get here a little bit earlier, but the tail end of the talk was awesome, and I could relate to a lot of what you were saying. A few people who spoke. I work with young people. A lot of them that I work with are diagnosed ADHD and some other oppositional defiant, and someone talked about self-medicating, and a lot of times I know that is what they do because they don't want to take the medication. And so healthcare, I have three parts of my platform. Healthcare is one of those things that I want to continue with President Obama. Had started. Was it perfect? No, but we were on the way to making it work for everyone. So I am a licensed insurance agent, and I spent quite a bit of my time working with the senior population in Medicare and those who are dual eligible, Medicaid and Medicare eligible. So that is near and dear to my heart, as well as the affordable health care piece. And so my goal is to make the state of Ohio a model for this country and abroad in terms of health care. So we got to get back on track to getting that right.
Go for it, Kathy.
Yes, so that is huge. That's huge. So I'm glad that I was able to be here to hear you speak on that piece. So I will tell you to go to my website. It's voteforkathy.com. I'm surprised that it was even available. That link is available, and you'll be able to find out, you know, everything about me in reference to what it is, what qualifies me for this position, and what I want to do and will do once I get to the State House. So do I have time?
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, good luck in this election. I know where my vote is. We have some wonderful things coming up next week.
Kathy with a K.
Kathy with a K.
Kathy with a K. Citizens Climate Lobby is next week. And March 6th is a surprise. And it's going to be a surprise to us too, because we don't know who it is yet. And March 13th is the Poor People's Campaign with Mary Aguilera. And we have wonderful things. And we have leftover food. And you need to consume that leftover food. Take a little box and make sure that it gets boxed up. Any other announcements? Before I wish you a very good week. Yes.
Don't do the brown acid. Do or don't? Don't. Don't what? They said that at Woodstock.
Okay. Now we get it.
I think he's asking us not to medicate. Okay, thank you for coming. Thank you. Have a good day today. Thank you.